The Ferrari rolled into town like a wounded king. Its engine screamed, coughed, and died in the middle of a bright summer afternoon, leaving a crowd gathered around one of the most expensive cars anyone in the city had ever seen. Mechanics from 3 different luxury garages had already inspected it. Specialists had flown in. Computer diagnostics had been run again and again. Every expert reached the same conclusion. The car was finished. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and ordinary people achieving extraordinary things, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who loves inspiring stories, and subscribe to Heartbound Father Tales. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories to life. The owner of the Ferrari was a billionaire entrepreneur named Vivian Hartwell. She was known across the country for building a technology empire from nothing. Newspapers called her unstoppable. Business magazines called her brilliant. Yet standing beside the silent Ferrari that afternoon, she looked defeated. The vehicle wasn't just a car. It had belonged to her late father. Years earlier, before she became wealthy, before magazine covers and private jets, her father had bought the Ferrari after decades of hard work. It had been his dream. When he passed away unexpectedly, the car became her most treasured possession. Every scratch carried a memory. Every drive reminded her of him. Now it sat motionless. Mechanics estimated repairs would cost more than the car's value. Some said replacement parts no longer existed. Others believed the engine damage was beyond recovery. Vivian had finally accepted defeat. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of town, a single father named Rowan Mercer was finishing another exhausting day. Rowan owned a tiny garage squeezed between an old bakery and a hardware store. The faded sign above the entrance barely hung on its rusted chains. Most customers drove older vehicles and paid in small installments because they couldn't afford large repair bills. Business was difficult. Since his wife had passed away 4 years earlier, Rowan had raised his 10-year-old daughter, Hazel, alone. Every morning he packed her lunch before sunrise. Every evening he helped with homework after spending 10 hours repairing engines. Money was always tight. But Rowan loved machines. He had an unusual gift for understanding them. While others relied heavily on computers, Rowan trusted his ears. He often joked that engines talked if someone listened carefully enough. That afternoon, a local tow truck driver mentioned the Ferrari. The story spread quickly. Everyone was talking about the billionaire whose priceless car couldn't be saved. Most people shrugged and moved on. Rowan couldn't stop thinking about it. Something about the situation bothered him. Maybe it was because everyone had already given up. Maybe it reminded him of how people had treated him after his wife died, assuming he could never rebuild his life. The next morning, curiosity led him to the luxury storage facility where the Ferrari was being kept before being shipped away. He expected security to turn him around immediately. Instead, after explaining who he was unexpectedly allowed inside. Vivian happened to be there reviewing transportation paperwork. She looked surprised when she saw the grease-stained mechanic standing near the vehicle. Rowan knew he looked out of place among the expensive suits and polished floors. But he politely asked for one chance. Just one. Not to repair the car. Simply to listen. The request seemed almost absurd. Dozens of experts had already examined the Ferrari. What could a small-town mechanic possibly discover? Still, Vivian was exhausted and had nothing left to lose. She agreed. Rowan approached the car slowly. The room became quiet. He opened the hood. He inspected the engine. Then he asked for the battery connection. A technician provided power. The Ferrari attempted to start. For a brief moment, the engine turned. Then came a faint metallic sound. A tiny click. Most people didn't even hear it. But Rowan froze. His expression changed instantly. Something had caught his attention. The sound lasted less than a second. Yet Rowan asked for the engine to be turned again. The click returned. Soft. Sharp. Almost hidden beneath the mechanical noise. Rowan smiled. For the first time in months, hope appeared in his eyes. The experts around him remained skeptical. But Rowan had heard something strange. Something important. He requested permission to take the car to his garage. The room erupted with disbelief. Some thought he was wasting everyone's time. Others considered the idea ridiculous. A Ferrari worth hundreds of thousands of dollars entering a garage that repaired old pickup trucks seemed laughable. Yet Vivian noticed something different. Every specialist she'd met sounded certain. Rowan sounded curious. And curiosity felt more honest than certainty. She agreed. 3 days later, the Ferrari sat inside Rowan's humble garage. Customers stopped outside to stare. Neighbors took photographs. Children pressed their faces against the windows. Inside, Rowan worked carefully. Hour after hour. Day after day. He studied every component. He reviewed diagrams. He listened repeatedly to recordings of the engine. At night, after Hazel went to sleep, he continued researching. The strange click haunted him. It didn't match the symptoms everyone described. According to the reports, the engine suffered catastrophic internal failure. But the click suggested something else. Something smaller. Something hidden. As the week passed, financial pressure mounted. Rowan temporarily turned away regular work to focus on the Ferrari. Bills accumulated. Savings shrank. Friends warned him he was risking everything. But he couldn't stop. The puzzle consumed him. Then one evening, while Hazel sat nearby doing homework, Rowan discovered a decades-old technical bulletin buried deep inside an online archive. The document described a rare manufacturing defect. Only a handful of vehicles worldwide had ever experienced it. The symptoms matched perfectly. Rowan's heart raced. The click wasn't coming from a destroyed engine. It came from a tiny internal synchronization component. A part smaller than a hand. A part almost nobody would think to inspect. The problem wasn't fatal. It was simply incredibly rare. For the next several days, Rowan searched tirelessly. The replacement part was no longer manufactured. Suppliers had none. Collectors couldn't help. Dead ends appeared everywhere. Then, through an old contact from his apprentice years, Rowan located a retired engineer living hundreds of miles away. The engineer happened to possess one final unused component. Just one. It arrived 4 days later. Rowan held it carefully like treasure. The entire future of the project rested on that small piece of metal. The repair took nearly 14 hours. Every movement required precision. One mistake could destroy the engine forever. When the work was finally complete, Rowan stood silently beside the Ferrari. His hands trembled. Hazel watched from the corner. Vivian arrived shortly afterward. The garage felt tense. Everyone knew what was at stake. Months of failure. Thousands of hours. Countless experts. Everything came down to a single moment. Rowan climbed into the driver's seat. He inserted the key. The engine turned once. Then twice. Suddenly, the Ferrari roared to life. The sound exploded through the garage like thunder. Powerful. Smooth. Perfect. For a moment nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then tears filled Vivian's eyes. The impossible had happened. The car everyone abandoned was alive again. Not because of expensive equipment. Not because of a famous specialist. But because one struggling single father listened when everyone else stopped listening. The story spread across the country. News stations covered it. Automotive magazines featured it. Customers began traveling long distances to visit Rowan's garage. Business transformed almost overnight. Within a year, Rowan expanded into a larger facility and hired additional mechanics. Families who once struggled to find affordable repairs now had access to trusted service. Opportunities multiplied. But the greatest moment came several months later. Vivian returned unexpectedly. She handed Rowan a framed photograph. It showed her father standing proudly beside the Ferrari decades earlier. Attached to the frame was a handwritten note. It explained that Rowan had done more than repair a car. He had restored a memory. He had brought back a piece of someone's family. And that meant more than money could ever buy. Hazel later placed the photograph on the wall of the new garage. Every customer who entered could see it. A reminder that miracles sometimes begin with something small. A sound nobody else hears. A chance nobody else takes. A person nobody else believes in. Before the ending, we have a special request. Comment below with the words, "Never give up," if you believe every person deserves a second chance to prove what they're capable of. Years later, whenever reporters asked Rowan about the famous Ferrari repair, he always gave the same answer. He never talked about talent. He never talked about luck. Instead, he spoke about patience. About listening. About refusing to quit when others have already decided something is impossible. Because sometimes the difference between failure and success is one strange sound. One overlooked clue. One act of belief. And one ordinary person willing to keep trying. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, leave a comment, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to Heartbound Father Tales for more emotional stories about hope, family, resilience, and unexpected miracles. Because the world changes when people choose to believe in possibilities others cannot see. And sometimes, the greatest engines we repair are not inside cars at all. They are inside human hearts.